presence. From the sea, they're using missiles, and American Marines who also, they land their boots also on the ground as often as they want.
To justify its invasion of Somalia, the U.S. claimed that it was looking for 3 terrorists. Halima Abdi Arush is Somali and chairperson of IDA, Women's Development Organization, a non-governmental organization based in Mogadishu.
While you're searching for 3 people, killing and bombing millions of people is not fair.
waxaa dhacaysa horta Mareykanku waxay rabaan inay dhahaan dadkii waa joogeen waana leynay laakiin haddana geedahan ay tuurayaan dadka ay ku dhacayaan oo dadka arooska qabay ama dadka guuraayay ama dad oo iska caadi ahoo wadankooda iska degan oo waliba rural area degan hadii lagu garaaco naceeb waxaa imaanayo oo arintaas ay keenayso ay ka dhigi karta dadka noocyada iyaga ay raadinayaan.
This is what happened in the south of Somalia. The first day there was a big celebration of a wedding which was bombed. Many people from both families died. There were nomads who were moving from one area to another who also died. If these things happen, the people that they are searching for today, maybe they do not find them, but they can find them tomorrow, because the survivors of that wedding, the brothers and sisters of the nomads that were killed, will become radical. They are starting to get angry against the Western countries, against the Americans, and they can be the base for terrorist groups.
As with the Congo, the U.S. wants to divide Somalia into several smaller countries to make the oil easier to control.
There's this massive, enormous oil deposits that Somalia sits on, and that's what America wants. So what actually the American scheme on this is to balkanize Somalia, break it up into like 5 small mini states, just like the Gulf states, the Emirates, yeah, and each one of them to have a small clan or tribal ruler, as such that America now becomes the dominant power that can have a separate deal with each one of them, and have Ethiopia's military power on the other side to intimidate them all along, such that they do not have any independence. Every clan can have a small oil field, which basically will be run by the Americans.
While it has tried unsuccessfully to destroy the Congo as a state, the U.S. has actually accomplished the same in the case of Somalia. Washington was the main force behind the disintegration of Somalia in 1990. During the 1980s, Somalia was the top recipient per capita of U.S. military and economic aid in Africa. Siad Barre, the country's dictator at the time, was a key strategic ally of Washington in the Cold War and got $600 million in U.S. aid. Following Barre's rampage of killing and plunder, Somalia literally fell apart. Barre's forces murdered 5,000 unarmed civilians in 88-89, and in 1990 he was overthrown.
With no central government, Somalia descended into chaos and civil war. The U.S. backed one warlord after another for the next 16 years to foment war and division and prevent the emergence of a central authority. This fighting has killed 1 million Somalis out of a population of 8 million. U.S. forces invaded Somalia in 1992 but were defeated and humiliated by Somali resistance fighters. When during 2006 the Islamic Courts Union appeared close to forming a central government and ending the civil war, the U.S. unleashed the Ethiopian invasion.
Mareykanka marka roolka kaliya ay ciyaareen waxay noqotay in ay nimanka warlordka ahay oo wadanka dhibaatada ku hayay kaliya inay kaalmeeyaan. Mar walbaba shacabka waa dareemayay inay jirto arintaas oo Mareykanka arrimaha ku jiro, waayihii hore waa inkiri jireen, markii dambana si toos ah u cadeysteen.
The only role of the Americans was to support these warlords who have brought all this chaos to the country. Americans used to deny this, but the Somali people were aware of their involvement, and in the end, the Americans made it clear themselves that they were doing this.
Markaasa waxaa dhacay dagaalo oo aan cidna loogu aabayeelaynin oo xaafadaha xamar ka dhacay oo kumanaan qofood ay ku dhinteen waqtiyo yar. kadibna ay dhacday arrintaas inay fursad u siiso qof la arko qofkii wax fahmayay iyo ma aragtay dadkii lacagta qabay inay kaalmeeyaan dadka hor yimaada dadkaas waxaana abuurmay gurubkii loo yaqiina ICU Islamic Courteska oo si degdeg ah u guulaystay.
There were chaos in Mogadishu. Thousands of people were killed. That's why the Islamic Courts Union was created, to stop the chaos.
Halima's husband and brother were killed in the civil war. Almost every Somali family has suffered similar losses.
So you could safely say that for the last 16 years, Somalia was maintained in the state it was in terms of disintegration of society and state, and not having a center or a central government for that matter. Through the Ethiopian direct interference, as well as the Americans. The Americans had a direct interest in Somalia, but using a proxy Ethiopia directly and militarily. I think they don't want a viable central power in Somalia. Not just strong, they don't want any viable central power in Somalia. The U.S. interest is, I'll tell you, the U.S. interest in blocking that is that Somalia is known to sit on massive deposits of minerals, oil, and other minerals too, including uranium. The Americans have tried for a very long time through their own companies to get concessions, but based on their own dictates from the former Somali dictator Siad Barre. You could say anything you want about Siad Barre, but he was a nationalist. So he never allowed an unfair deal between him and the Americans. He would say, if it takes 100 years later, well, let the sons and the daughters of the soil come out with the right technology and the right knowledge for them to exploit their own natural resources instead of you taking it cheaply from me now. Because there was a 70-30 kind of an arrangement that the Americans wanted, I think, through Conoco, which is an American oil company, and others. That's what I hear. But then he refused. He said, sorry, it has to be a fair deal. No benefits going to the Somalis, unless to the Americans. Well, the Americans supported Siad Barre, but later on again undermined him. So there is very reliable information that most of the warlords who took up arms against Siad Barre also had the tacit support of the American center, supporting the warlords and basically going for this disintegration of the state and society. And the sad part of it is that it's militarizing a society that essentially is not a militaristic society. It has better priorities in life. It has different priorities. It has economic welfare, education, development as such, and other things.
You have been listening to Militarizing Africa, the first episode of the documentary series The Ravaging of Africa.
The Ravaging of Africa is dedicated to the memory of Patrice Lumumba.
This series was written by Asad Ismi and produced by Kristen Schwartz. Go to www.asadismi.ws. That's www.asadismi.ws for more information or to download the series.
Translation by Maziyar Mohajir at Toronto Conversation Corner and Farid Omar. Voiceover by Benedicta Madavo.
Theme music is Ner Balankina by Captain Yaba from Ghana.
On this episode, you also heard Mukaji by Papa Wemba from the Congo. This series was funded by Canadian Union of Public Employees Local 3903, QP National, Canadian Union of Postal Workers National, CUPW North Bay Local, Canadian Labour Congress, Public Service Alliance of Canada, Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, and Mining Watch Canada.
Thank you for listening.